The ground of the mountain is a low, guttural thing, a sound felt in the teeth before it is heard. It is the language of rock giving way. For the hunter, one moment is the familiar crunch of frozen earth under his high-dropped feet. The next is a concussion of air and a roar that swallows the sky. The world dissolves into a grey, churning chaos of stone and ice. He is thrown, a piece of driftwood in a landslide, his spear ripped from his grasp. Then, as suddenly as it began, silent, a profound, ringing silence that is heavier than the noise it replaced. Dust, fine as ochre powder, hangs in the frigid air, catching the low sun in pale orange columns. The path is gone. The three others from his clan, the shapes he has known since birth, are gone. He is utterly alone. He pushes himself up, his powerful arms trembling. A wave of nausea and a pain so sharp, it is white and blinding erupts from his left leg. He looks down. The thick hide leggings are torn, and through the bloody rip, a shard of his own bone jets out, stark and obscene against the snow. The world tilts. Panic, cold and sweat, tries to grip his throat, but the discipline of 1,000 hunts holds it at bay. He is an archaic hominid, a creature of this unforgiving landscape, and his mind, a tool sharpened by generations of survival, goes to work, shelter, water. The litany is old as his human ancestors. The red staining the snow around his leg is a clock, ticking away his life. He cannot stand. He tries, and the world dissolves into a fresh agony. So he crawls. Each movement is a negotiation with torment, dragging the useless limb behind him like a broken spear. The coarse gravel and sharp ice of the moraine air at his hands. But the pain is distant. A dull echo of the fire in his leg. The silence of the Altai highlands presses in. Before, it was a silence filled with the possibility of prey, the distant calls of his own kind. Now, it is an empty vessel, a void that magnifies his solitude. He is a single, slow-moving wound in a landscape of sublime indifference. He is no longer a hunter. He is meat, a scent on the wind for the cave hyena or the short-faced bear. The world he mastered an hour ago now sees him only as an opportunity. The ghosts of the Pleistocene megafauna are stirring in the twilight, and for the first time in his adult life, he feels the primal fear of the hunted. He must find cover. His eyes, adapted to this thin air and harsh light, scan the ridgeline. There, a node lurch, a black shape clinging to a rock face he recognizes. Below it, a shadow, an overhang, a place to escape the wind, to not die in the open. It is a terrible distance, but it is the only distance that matters now in this world of prehistoric life. The shelter is barely a scoop in the rock, a shallow cave that smells of damp earth and old snow. He drags himself into its frozen embrace. The agony in his leg are constant, screaming companion. Days and nights blur into a single, grey continuum of pain. A heat that has nothing to do with the sun blooms from the wound, a fever that brings with it the ghosts of his clan. He sees their faces in the swirling patterns of lichen on the stone, hears their voices in the ceaseless wind. The loneliness is a physical presence now, a heavy cloak that smothers him. Hominid history is a story of groups, of clans, of us. The story of one is the story of an end. That night, the true masters of this cold land begin to sing. The whooping calls of cave hyenas echo down the barren slopes, a sound of patient, lethal curiosity. He sees their shadows, bulky and misshapen. Moving at the edge of the weak fire, he manages to coax from a piece of iron pyrite and a tuft of dried moss. He spends his waking moments of clarity dragging loose stones to the mouth of the cave, building a crude, desperate wall. Each rock moved as a fresh wave of fire in his leg.
They march side by
a grunt
side,
of exertion torn from his lungs.
Between them,
Hunger soon eclipses the pain.
Toward the river.
The few remaining strips of dried ibex meat in his pouch are gone. His body, a furnace of infection, is consuming itself. He watches the world through a shimmering haze of fever. Not as a hunter, but as a prisoner. He sees a family of Paris's cats, their flat faces and thick fur perfect for this world. and feels a pain not of hunger, but of envy for their wholeness. Then, a flicker of opportunity. A snowvole, heedless and bold, scurries near the cave mouth. His mind, the ancient repository of survival skills, cuts through the fog. He cannot pounce. He cannot throw. He must think. From his pouch, he pulls 2 stones. His hands, though clumsy with cold and weakness, know the familiar grammar of lithic technology. He strikes one against the other. A flake of chert, nearly sharp, falls away. He has his blade. With painstaking effort, he fashions a simple deadfall trap. A flat stone propped up by a trigger of tiny coarse branches, baited with a sliver of his own leather tunic. These are the ancient tools of early humans, testament to foresight. He waits. The waiting is a new kind of torture, an exercise in stillness against every screaming instinct. The sun crawls across the sky. The shadows lengthen. Finally, the vole appears. It sniffs. It hesitates. It darts forward. The crack of the stone falling is deafening in the silence. For a moment, he feels nothing. Then, a surge of something grim and vital. He crawls to the trap, his heart pounding a sip. We tread him. The snow. Broken body is a miracle. He eats. The raw meat and warm blood a sacrament against the encroaching void. Later, chewing on a tiny femur, he holds the bone up to the light of his fire. He turns it over and over. It is not just the memory of a meal. It is a shape, a form, a piece of the world he can hold and understand. In the crushing emptiness, he begins a silent conversation with the bone. A dialogue that is the first step toward a thought no one in his lineage has ever had. The study of anthropology would one day try to name this moment, but for him, it is simply the only sound in a world gone silent. The infection is a tide, pulling him out into a dark, featureless ocean. The fevered dreams are relentless now, a chaotic tapestry of running herds, lost faces, and the crushing weight of rock. He knows he is dying. The knowledge is not a thought, but a cold certainty that settles deep in his marrow. The struggle for food, for food, has become a secondary battle. The primary war is being fought within his own blood, and it is a war he is losing. The crude wall he built is his fortress. The small fire, his last star in a fading sky. His world has shrunk to this tiny theater of stone and shadow. A final stage in the long, unbroken epic of human evolution. He is a dead end, a forgotten branch on a vast and sprawling tree of human ancestors. One dawn, after a night of torment, he finds a piece of his old world washed up on the shore of his consciousness. It is a tooth, a canine, long and curved, from a cave lion he helped hunt seasons ago. A tree decapitated, a memento of a great struggle and a greater victory. A day when his clan was whole and strong. He turns the smooth, ivory-colored object over in his palm. It is solid. It is real. It is a piece of a life that is no longer his. His gaze falls upon a sliver of sharpened flint, a remnant from his trap-making. He picks it up. An impulse, born of what? He cannot say not hunger, not fear, but something else. Something utterly new guides his hand. He places the point of the flint against the root of the tooth. He begins to twist. The work is agonizingly slow. His hands shake. Sweat born of fever and effort beads on his heavy brow. He must rest after every few turns, his breath coming in ragged bursts. Why is he doing this? The question is a flicker of thought, quickly extinguished by the sheer, primal focus of the act itself. This is not the purposeful, practical work of making a spear point or a scraper. This action creates nothing that will kill a beast or skin a hide. This is primitive technology bent to an entirely different purpose, a purpose he does not understand but feels compelled to obey. He drills. The sun climbs the sky, its pale light moving across the cave floor. The hyenas call in the distance, but he does not hear them. The gnawing emptiness in his belly is forgotten. There is only the tooth, the flint, and the slow, grinding creation of a hole where there was no hole before. Days may pass. He uses a fine shard of bone and gritty sand to smooth the edges. He crushes a lump of reddish rock, mixing the ochre with spittle to make a paste, and rubs it into the groove he has carved. Finally, it is done. A perfect, smooth, red-ringed hole. He threads a thin strip of sinew through it. He holds it up. It is not a tool. It is not a weapon. It is something else. A piece of his story. A mark of his existence. In this final act, a piece of what scholars of cognitive archaeology would call symbolic behavior is born not in a bustling clan, but in the desolate solitude of a dying individual. It is a message to the void, a declaration that he was here. He lies back, his breathing shallow. He holds the pendant in his hand, the smooth bone a final, comforting weight. He is alone, but in his hand, he holds the first star ever carved by a human hand, a silent testament to a mind that, even at the edge of extinction, refused to simply disappear. Embers and echoes. The body is never found. The small cave is scoured by seasons of wind and snow. The crude wall collapses. The ashes of the last fire are scattered. The story of this lone Denisovan, a footnote in the grand, brutal saga of hominid history, ends in silence. But what he created does not. The tooth, small and insignificant, is washed from the cave by a spring melt, tumbled down the scree slope, and buried in the silt of an ancient riverbed. There it waits. It waits through the rise and fall of ice sheets, through the migrations of mammoth and the extinction of the cave lion. It waits for the world to change, for new kinds of minds to walk the earth, for the discipline of archaeology to be born. His lonely act, born of pain and a dawning consciousness, becomes a whisper across a gulf of nearly 1,000,000 years. It is a testament that survival is not merely about the heart that beats, but about the mind that reaches for meaning. It is the bedrock of our own instinct to mark our passage, to create order in the chaos, to leave a sign that says, I was here. His personal end was the beginning of an idea, the very idea that allows us to find his story, to wonder at it, and to recognize, in that solitary act of creation, the faint, flickering ghost of ourselves. This is the chronicle. We do not create the past. We are merely its witness. And the ice remembers more than both.